Okay, welcome to the show. Today we have Haydn Evans. Haydn is a property investor, now entrepreneur with 1 million plus net worth, and is also on a quest to optimize his health, longevity, and live forever. Haydn, welcome to the show.
Boom. Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome. Okay.
Excited.
Nice. Best place to start is if we could jump right back kind of to the start of your journey, ideally around like university and what you were kind of thinking of doing, and then ultimately what pushed you in this direction of building long-term wealth.
Okay, yeah, I think initially I was going to be an actor, but then I wanted more control in my life. So I pivoted in university to study business, which led me on a different trajectory. So I guess I didn't really know what I wanted to do at university, and I just studied something that I was like potentially good at, which is English and drama. And I remember reading this book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Have you read that book?
It's one of those ones where I've not read the book, but I've like read the summary. So
right, okay,
know a little bit.
So you know the 7 habits. You got the highlights.
Not off by heart.
Yeah, neither do I off by heart. But in it was this really great exercise where you envision your life in the future and what you want it to be like in vivid detail. You imagine that you're going to die, or you're at your own funeral, actually, and then you project what someone would say about you. And for me, it was knowing that I had like a genuine impact on the world, and being actually a person of influence and power. And I felt really at university after this first year that like I really wasn't on that trajectory. It was I think the acting industry, unless you get to the top of your profession, you're like a Hollywood actor or something, you don't really have much autonomy in what you do. Whereas in business, you can really create change by starting from the ground up and building your own thing. So yeah, I remember just thinking, oh God, like what do I do? Like, do I like quit uni and like start a business, whatever? But instead, I decided to do a year abroad at the Haas Business School. Well, actually, I did a year abroad in Berkeley, California, and study business for the year. And at the time, my girlfriend and I, we went to see the admissions person at the university, and she was like, "Well, you're both not going to get in to Berkeley because it is ridiculously hard for even one of you to get in. So, and like both of you aren't going to get in. But we were super in love, so we were like, no, we both want to go. So we're like, how do we get into this university and study something completely different than what I was doing typically, which is English and drama, and get in for business? So we went out, we did it backwards. So we were like, okay, let's find out what Berkeley is specifically known for that no other university in America is known for, so that we can get in. So we basically put this application together that was super specific to getting into Berkeley. We said we were going to do some bizarre niche study. So we managed to both get in. I remember when we both got in, it was just like the best thing ever. It was just amazing. And when we got there, we then changed course to what we wanted. So I then changed it to business.
Interesting. How difficult was that? Is that something?
You know what? Like, no couple had ever got in together throughout the whole of history of like Kent University I was at. So it was very difficult that we got to. And I basically managed to get in the back door into one of the best business schools in the world, like Haas Business School is one. And it was just amazing meeting these super successful students who come from very wealthy families. And as a result of that, making friends with these guys who were lovely, had lovely families as well. And, being given like one of my mates' BMWs to drive around California for like 3 months. I was staying at these people's houses. like very wealthy families in mansions, living in Beverly Hills, like living near the Kardashians, and being open to that kind of energy, I think, and wealth at that young age really gave me this fire to come back to the UK and get into business properly, and to really pursue what I thought would be a wealth creation, which was property. And in short, that was kind of like the impetus of like how it happened. So I feel grateful that I was sort of in the right place at the right time with meeting those kind of people. Yeah.
How did you find out that property could be a vehicle for wealth creation? What were your inspirations?
I found out how property could be a great vehicle for wealth creation by reading, controversially, a book by Donald Trump.
Interesting. Can you remember the book title?
Oh, I think it was like How to Get Rich or something, or like Being Rich or something like that. Had this bright gold cover and like Trump in big letters. I'm assuming he didn't write it and he just got some ghost writer to do it. But it was kind of like a side thing. I thought, well, people have invested a lot of money in there's a lot of wealth in property just generally. But I saw him as a figure who had made a huge amount of wealth. I thought there's got to be something here. And then I sort of shared this with my family, and by some chance we had a family friend. It was actually my sister's friend's dad, who was a very successful property developer in Earlsfield, who built quite a lot. He was like in his 80s at the time. And meeting him and working with him, because he offered me a job just straight out of university, gave me this real insight into how you can cultivate wealth by basically buying property and holding it for the long term. Mm-hmm. And he's, created a huge amount of wealth from doing that. And, and he would always reiterate, like, it's not rocket science. Like, it's simple. Like, he never went to university. I come from a very working class background, like multi-millionaire. So I think that was probably it. Yeah, I'd say.
That makes sense. Makes sense. Picking up on one thing, read the Donald Trump book.
Yeah.
So I've often thought it would be an interesting social media segment to do something like good ideas from bad people.
Oh, I like that. Yeah, yeah.
Like people who are a little bit controversial be like, yeah, but what is the thing that you can like pick out from that?
Yes. Yeah. But no, yeah, that does make sense. Like, I mean, what would it be for Donald Trump? I think with Donald Trump, I don't follow politics, to be honest, in America, right? But what a great brander. He's so good at branding. Like, over 50% of the people, 50% of the people in America hate him. And he's president of the United States. Like, I mean, unreal. He was the president of the United States. Branding.
Yeah. And back to property.
Yeah.
How did you first amass, enough money to get a foot in the ladder? What was your route into that?
Yeah, I think I wanted to take it very seriously. And I think with property investing, if you want to do it properly, you have to commit to it like it's a job. I took on it as a full-time job. So I actually got a job in a small investment company. And I was very lucky, really, that I got it. I was taken in at quite a young age, like 22, 23. And I was really underqualified for the job. But I made it clear to the director, I was like, look, basically, if I don't perform, I know I can do this job, which is a sales job. It's like negotiating property purchases to then sell. Then you can fire me. Basically, sort of laid it on the line. I was like, look, I can do this job. Like, hire me, and if I don't perform, just fire me. And luckily, I did perform because I learned from other people in the organization. I was just sort of like, I basically copied the top performer to the T. There wasn't any training, but I just copied what he did, and I was able then to accumulate quite a large amount of commission by doing these property transactions, property sales. And at the same time, a large amount of knowledge, because there was such high volume of property transactions. I was able to accumulate these 10,000 hours or the equivalent quite quickly, these multiple different scenarios. So it then enabled me to then start buying properties myself and buying and selling these properties. And I was grateful again that the director of the company facilitated that for me. So properties that didn't match his criteria for purchase, I then said, would you be open for me to purchase these instead? And on occasion, he would allow me to do this. So that then allowed me to accumulate wealth. So buying and selling, this pot of money. And then I was able to then take that pot of money at some point and then buy to let properties, income producing properties, if that makes sense.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Yeah. And when you emulated the skills or behavior of that top sales performer, what were 2 or 3 of those top behaviors?
I'd say the 2 top behaviors of the top performer in the sales organization was 1, not having a fear of confrontation, and 2, being prepared to walk away from the negotiation. So how did the first one manifest? So these were difficult, tricky negotiations. Like, you're negotiating with someone who might be their home, and they might be under a lot of stress because they need to sell their property quickly. Maybe they're going through a divorce. And ultimately, we were buying properties at 20% less than the market value in order to give someone a quick sale. So we're giving them a service, but for that, they had to take less than what they wanted on their property. And he was just prepared to sit in the uncomfortable communication around, well, sorry, we're going to have to purchase your property at this amount of money. And I'd be prepared to sit with someone freaking out about that. No, you're trying to get me over, blah, 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 even getting into some sort of verbal aggressive fight with on the phone. But just being centered enough to just being okay to let that emotion swiftly go through and then actually just recommit to, look, at the end of the day, we just want to get this deal done. How can we solve your problem? And I think that's actually, it's surprisingly difficult to do that, actually. It's challenging because when there's confrontation, I think naturally we want to retreat or we want to attack, right? We want to get into a fight. So just staying centered within that is difficult, but also very effective when you're negotiating. And then this sort of being prepared to walk away from a transaction, I think it was actually 50 Cent who said this. It's the person that is willing to walk away from the transaction or the deal, is going to win. This sort of take it or leave it attitude is very effective in negotiation. So presenting the offer, if that works, great. If not, no hard feelings. As opposed to trying to convince someone to make the deal work. Now, I could go on probably for an hour about how both those examples, you could break that down into communication and the maybe what kind of conversations you might have with a person. But yeah, in principle, it would be those 2 things, I'd say.
Nice. I like that. And then to flip it the other way, what are the 2 top mistakes that you saw or see other salespeople make in these sorts of interactions?
I'd say the top 2 mistakes I see in negotiation are 1, taking no for an answer too soon, and 2, not going in low enough in the beginning. And I think both of these points come down to a feeling of being uncomfortable, of breaking social convention. It's uncomfortable to say to someone when say it, I don't know, a laptop's worth £100, to say, I'll offer you £50, it's uncomfortable because you risk the other person going, what, that's ridiculous. Like, what are you talking about? But naturally, the lower you go in the beginning, it's called anchoring, the less you need to go up. And you'd be so surprised. I was chatting to someone yesterday about property negotiation. Sometimes you will go in so low because you're setting that anchor and people just accept it. And you've no idea. You've no idea what's going on for the other person. The worst thing they can say is no, and then you can go up from there. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are afraid of no, which leads on to the second point. They think that when someone says no, that's the end of the negotiation. It's not. That's the start of the negotiation. And then you're working a way around it. Like I've had people, as an example, we had a gentleman who we were purchasing a property with. My colleague was dealing with it. And the chap, he got to the point where he'd said no so many times to the property reduction that the lead had been closed, and he was actually putting in a complaint, like in the company. He was like, he was screwing at people on the phone, like telling people to fuck off, right? Because basically what had happened is we'd had a survey on the property and it was structurally unsound because it wasn't structurally sound, the property. So we had to then go in with a further reduction because there was like structural problems with the property, right? So we had to buy it cheaper, and he just couldn't get that in his head. And it was completely dead. And this would happen quite a lot. I would then call a dead lead and I would then get that back round, right? And after everyone had given up, but if you just don't give up, that's the key, right? Like people just give up too early in these negotiations. So in that particular example, it was, he mean, oh, what the fuck are you calling me for? You know what? You're right. The fact that I'm calling you is ridiculous. And I'm calling you to have a conversation about the miscommunication that, well, yeah, he is. I had to listen to him, like slate my friend for 20 minutes, like in the office. But ultimately, once it offloaded, I explained the same thing to him again, and he went for it. He accepted it. So it's just, I think it's the heart of it is being willing to sit in the uncomfortable feelings of a negotiation, and be prepared to kind of go through that emotional pain with the other person, and you get through it to the other side, and they can feel that you just want the deal done, and you want it done just for as much as them as it is for you. You can hear them out, you can empathize with them, but at the end of the day, look, you can hate me, like me, hate me, I don't care, but let's just get the deal done to solve your problem. And I think that sort of attitude tends to work well.
I like that. That's powerful. That's really cool. And now thinking about building long-term wealth.
Yeah.
And a phrase which is often used, passive income.
Yeah.
In your view, how passive is the income that you generate from property investment?
This is a really great question. The value of passive income and how valuable is passive income when it comes to property investing. How passive is passive income? I actually think now that it's a bit of bullshit, passive income. And I think it's actually the wrong metric to focus on. One should focus on building wealth and increasing their income dramatically, and then invest it passively, right? Because it's all well and good someone putting aside, I don't know, £100 a month or something and investing it in, I don't know, the S&P 500 or whatever. The reality is it's going to take years for them to become financially free by doing that. The most effective strategy is actually doubling down on what you're good at. So, for you, it's marketing, right? Like if it were me, I'd be reinvesting in that. How can I start making as much money as I can in that? 100 grand, 200 grand a year, building a side business, doing that. Then you're earning like 500 grand a year. Maybe you build that into a small business. You're making £1 million a year. Once you've done that and you're making about £1,000,000 a year and you're putting aside, say, 500, well, hopefully more than that, like 500 grand or whatever, like this might take you 10 years, all right? But then you can like start buying like an apartment building or a portfolio of properties. But it's just, honestly, in retrospect, it's not worth this. It's like one-off, like little purchase, unless you're going to partner with someone who can do that for you. You're much better, I think, doubling down on how can I increase the value of what I'm doing at the moment. How can I make more money at what I'm good at right now? Doubling down on your strengths, as opposed to, learning how to do like property on the side and like buying one buy-to-let property that's going to make you like £500 a month. Like, what's the point? Like, double down, make a large chunk of money first, and then invest that.
That's really interesting and stands in contrast, I think, to a lot of the videos slightly sensationalizing property that you see on like TikTok, Instagram, etc. What for you, in your view, is the absolute toughest thing, both intellectually and potentially like emotionally, about property investing?
I think the most challenging part of property investing is being able to emotionally detach from the day-to-day activities of what's happening, because you can really throw people off. Like a few examples, like let's say you're renovating a house. Often someone will renovate that property based on what they would like, but it's not their home, right? They are creating a product for someone to live in, so they should be tailoring it to the person who's going to live in the property. Another example could be dealing with a tenant who stopped paying their rent. Unfortunately, I've been in situations where emotionally I've become invested in the tenant and I haven't followed the procedure that I should have, which is through the eviction process, and it's come to really bite me. Unfortunately, people aren't, when they get in difficult situations or whatever, like they'll lie, they'll do anything they can to, and it can cause you issues, right? So I think it's about emotionally detaching. It's almost not even viewing it like you own a property. That's a weird thing to say, but viewing it as an external investment that you've got no emotional attachment to. And it's not like you own a house, that you own some spreadsheets and some numbers. Because otherwise it would you should just... I think generally with investing, the less emotional you are about it, the more logical you are, the better results you'll get.
Makes sense. And now, looking at completely different areas, health and longevity. How long has health and longevity been a focus for you? And how have you gotten from when you were first interested in it to now being like fairly closely aligned to the Brian Johnson blueprint protocol?
Sure. So what was the first part of the question? Sorry, it was...
How did you first become so strongly interested?
In it, yeah. My obsession with health began when I read a National Geographic article when I was about 8 years old. It was my dad's National Geographic, because he was a photographer. Essentially, it was talking about how we can like radically extend people's lifespan through emerging technology. And it really captured my imagination as a child. I was super interested in that. I read a lot of science fiction. But I really forgot about it. As all sort of became maybe disillusioned with that as like a reality until I was like 28. Two things happened. Firstly, my girlfriend was like, you just keep on getting ill. Like, we don't know what the fuck is going on here, but like, you just keep on getting ill all the time. Like, you're not looking after yourself. And I wasn't really. I was going to the gym. I was doing these things, but I just kept on getting ill like once a month. She just got fed up with it. So I decided to go on a journey of discovering, what was making me ill, to try and solve that. And I came across Peter Attia, his podcast, which is super useful. And then the second thing was, I was living at Stepney, and our mutual, my accommodation they used to live in, and our mutual friend Henry, it was his birthday, and I had an early morning. I had to do something really early next day, but he came back with friends, and he had this party downstairs, right? like woke me up at like 1 a.m. I go down, I'm like, God, man, like I've got this important meeting tomorrow. Like, honestly, you just like gotta shut up. Like, oh, I'm sorry, man. Right, yeah, right, okay. Like, oh, fuck it. Go back upstairs, right? I'm like falling asleep. Music turns back on again. I'm like, okay, like, look, it's his birthday, like, whatever. Like, you know, I just let him go. But what happened then was I just realized I wasn't going to fall asleep. And I had probably like 5 hours to kill. And I was like, what am I really interested in? Like, I looked inside, I was like, what would I really want to do right now? I don't have anything else I need to do. And I was like, oh, you know, and I thought about the National Geographic, and I was like, I wonder if people are doing that these days. And I went on YouTube, and there's this an amazing woman, Laura Deming, who, I mean, she's genius. Like, she went to university. I think it was Harvard or Stanford. She got in as like a teenager. You know, I think like 15 or something, like 14, 15, got into Harvard, and she to study. I think it was like molecular biology. And I was watching this interview of her launching a fund, an investment fund specifically on solving aging. And the speech that she did really resonated with something that I thought of as a kid, which is, it's kind of our society, right? It's actually kind of insane that we're not unitedly tackling aging in a clear collective way. If you think about it, like, what do we all want as humans? Like, I think we'd all agree on that we'd want happiness generally. That's kind of generally considered. We all want to be healthy, right? The one of the biggest issues towards health and happiness, unfortunately, is age. You know, you can say, oh, age gracefully. Yep, totally get that. We can all do that in the right way. But unfortunately, as you get older, diseases become more prevalent. You know, pain comes in. You know, you can't walk properly. You know, some people spend the last 10 years of their life, you know, in debilitating pain. You know, we have these prevalence of cancer, you know, type 2 diabetes, you know, dementia that really ravages our older age group. Like, if there's something that is causing that much issues to society, think about how much pain that's causing society. Think about, I mean, it's mad for me to say this, but what causes the most amount of death? Well, is aging. Well, you say, well, hang on, aging's inevitable. Does it have to be? Does it have to be inevitable? And it always struck me as like, stroke me? Oh. It striked me as a kid that it was crazy that we weren't putting more resources into trying to solve aging. And this is what she spoke to. And I really resonated with that. And I thought, well, how can I live my life in a way where I'm not prioritizing my health? And I was prioritizing work at the time. I was overworking myself. And I realized I would be hypocritical if I didn't prioritize that. Yeah, and then that sort of took me on that journey of discovering, you know, what was healthy, which is very different than what a lot of people would think in like the conventional literature. You know, yeah.
Oh, I like that. And then, what are the key 3 or 4 things that you're doing to achieve your longevity goals right now?
So the 3 or 4 things that I'm doing to achieve my longevity goals right now, I would say fall into a few categories: nutrition, sleep, exercise, supplementation. Really, like, you don't really need to get more, you know, like, if you got to get the basics right first. I mean, look, for example, my sleep has been really bad this week, so I'm not good at that. But if you get your sleep right, I find that is a key domino to everything else lining up. So, for example, if you get an early night, maybe take some nice sleep supplements, you get a decent 8 hours, you wake up in the morning and you go to the gym, that kickstarts this chain of positivity throughout the day. I found that if you can nail sleep, essentially getting 8 hours a night, then you can now exercise, doing an hour a day of exercise. You're feeling good. You can then plan your food for the day. Maybe you do some, like once a week, you do some food prep and you focus on eliminating processed foods. Super simple, eating lots of fruit and veg, fiber. And then once you've done that, you can then focus on supplementation. So I think a lot of people just go to like, oh, I'm like feel tired, like I'm just gonna have some B vitamins or like some magnesium or whatever. But like, no, like start with the basics first, right? Start with sleep, leading to exercise, leading to nutrition, and then you can play around with the more interesting stuff.
Gotcha. How much overall do you think it costs the average person, or you in this case, to follow a fairly strict longevity protocol?
So the cost for a fairly strict longevity protocol, I would actually say from a baseline, the 80% is zero cost. It would be the same as like a typical lifestyle. I'll give you an example, right? It doesn't cost anything to go to bed early. It doesn't cost anything to have 8 hours sleep. It doesn't cost anything to exercise an hour a day. I mean, look, you might need to get a gym membership. I don't know, £30 a month or whatever. That's what I spend to get into the gym and work out every day. It doesn't cost anything, I personally think, more to eat more nutritious food. I mean, I guess if you were going to be super maniacal about it, you would say, well, that processed food on average is like cheaper. But I say the lifestyle of most of our friends in London when they're eating unhealthy is probably Deliveroo. It's ridiculously expensive, right? Spending once a week, deciding what you're going to eat, cutting out the processed food, putting in more fruit and veg, which vegetables is cheap in your diet. There's no, I think actually probably save you money. You know, you're eating less food. And then the supplements, honestly, I think people over worry about that. You know, I think get the basics first, right? Before you start spending money on expensive supplements like NMN, NR, or like start playing around with rapamycin, all these like expensive drugs. You can do that, but like get the basics done first. So I think from a base level, like there's like zero cost, I think, to starting it. At the moment, I probably spend, to be fair, I think myself, I probably spend like a couple of grand a month on it because I'm doing these sort of extra interventions that are more expensive.
Cool. That makes sense. And an interesting angle on this would be, what do you think are the social impacts, the impacts on your social life of having strong longevity goals?
What are the impact? Yeah, I mean, the impact on my social life when it comes to having longevity goals and being healthy, I think it's a double-edged sword. I think on the one hand, what makes me quite happy is that I notice it has a positive impact on other people around me. And but on the other hand, it causes issues, right? Like leaving early, it prevents some form of connection when, you know, maybe you're in the middle of a conversation, like in a club or whatever, and like, you know, you're your mate's birthday party, and you look at the time and I've got to go. But I'd say overall it's a net benefit because the healthier someone is, well, the healthier I am, the more I feel like I can give more of my time and energy and love and care to people that I care about, and as a result of that has a positive impact. Yeah, like I think having a hard line, actually, it's interesting. Like, for example, like I don't drink, right? I drink very rarely, so I will say no, I just don't drink. In the past, I would say, oh, I'm probably not going to drink tonight. What would happen when I would say something like that is, oh no, like, come on, let's drink. Like, you know, there'd be this pushback, and then like, oh, eventually I might end up starting drinking a little bit, and like there's this peer pressure there. Whereas I found if you actually just put a line and said, no, I actually just don't drink, people will respond very differently. You know, I really respect that, actually. Like, I'm actually trying to cut down at the moment. Like, and then you can see that might change someone. For actually, like, look, I'm not going to have a drink of alcohol. I'm just going to have, like, look, just give me a soda or something. So it's nice to see that. Or like, oh, I'm leaving early. Like, you know, you guys have fun, enjoy yourselves. Like, Actually, you know what? I might leave early as well. Like, I've got to go to the gym tomorrow. So I do like that. I like seeing those, but it's hard, right?
Yeah. That makes me think of two things. One, the impact on others is that I've often, since cutting out alcohol, thought that the biggest thing it might impact is like dating. But actually, there's so many moments where I get the strong sense that someone feels relieved that they don't have to drink.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. Nice.
Particularly if they're a little bit into health. Like, they don't have to be, super into it. If they're a little bit into it, they're like, okay, whatever comes of tonight, at least tomorrow I'm not going to wake up being like, I had X many drinks.
Do you think that's like a change? I feel like I've noticed that a little bit within younger people. It's kind of like a bit of
I think that now versus 10 years ago versus 20 years ago, I think it's a lot more socially acceptable. And I think part of that is the impact of social medias and even influencers to some degree. Like it's a lot more, I think, in media in general, social media and on TV, alcohol was previously associated with success.
Right, yeah.
Whereas now, when you think about successful people, a strong segment of that are actually people who are very focused on health and longevity and not drinking alcohol and things like that. So I think that makes it not only socially acceptable, but it also helps people kind of easily put you in a social category, which has positives and negatives. You don't want to ever be put in a box, but I think it does. The unconscious signal it gives is no longer wholly negative. It's either neutral or positive.
That makes sense. I guess like in the past, when you're at uni, you'd be like, "Oh, that's fucking weird." Whereas now it's like, "Oh God, this guy like takes his health pretty seriously. Like he's got some shit going on for him. Like, well, he's not drinking tomorrow. Like, interesting."
100%. What is the biggest change that you feel day to day, having focused more on more of the final 5-10% of longevity? So for instance, what supplements have you taken that you felt the biggest positive impact from?
I would say it's actually extra virgin olive oil.
Interesting.
Now, I actually can't feel the difference. I think this is when you get to like this optimization point, you need to have blood tests to actually see the difference. But having high quality olive oil, and by what I mean by that is not like Tesco's like extra virgin olive oil like that. It's just like absolute crap. Like, in this like plastic bottle, that's rubbish. Like you need to be getting like, it's quite expensive. Like, like £30 a bottle. I mean, there's some recommendations I could like put forward of good olive oils. But really high quality extra virgin olive oil is shown to drastically reduce cardio markers of heart attack. Improve insulin sensitivity. It's just like we did this test right before and after me bringing on extra virgin olive oil and like the large amounts I would consume, and the results were insanely improved. Like some of my markers, 3 times improved, which is just like unfounded. So yeah, something as simple as adding really high quality extra virgin olive oil on your food, like 1 tablespoon a day, it has so many good qualities. Yeah,
cool.
I recommend.
And are there any mistakes that you made on your longevity journey that you look back and think that was a fucking waste of time, waste of money, waste of effort? Were there any things like that?
Yeah, you know what, that's a really good point. I think where I wasted a lot of time and effort was on using supplements and not recording the benefit of them, or not being able to track what improvement they made or didn't make to me. So for example, I would just, back in the day, I would just be like reading through, oh, that looks like a good supplement, like let me take it. It's like, well, okay, I just take it for like 2 weeks, like don't really notice any change, don't know whether it's actually doing anything for me. Like I'm taking like a B vitamin, like what's that doing to my vitamin levels? It's just a complete waste of time. Like what you need to do, unfortunately, it's like a bit annoying because like there is an expense to it. But if you're gonna properly do supplementation, you need to do a baseline first. So you need to go get your blood test done. It's like maybe like a couple of £100 from Randox, like full blood test. gives you like 2 over 6 months. So you can do 2 of these blood tests. Then, so you test yourself, so you know what you're like on a baseline. Then add in a supplement. So you might want to add in like a multivitamin or magnesium, or a list of supplements. But I could share with you all the supplements I take. You could try out a few of these, and then retest. And then you can see whether your data is improved or not. And if it hasn't improved, well, don't bother taking the supplement. Or maybe you realize that your vitamin D levels were actually fine in the beginning, so you didn't need to take any vitamin D. Do you catch my drift? So there's no point in implementing a supplement unless you're going to track the change, because you can't tell whether it's going to make an effective difference or not, right? Unless you track. So yeah, this is where I wasted a lot of money.
Gotcha. Makes sense. And then a final handful of slightly fun questions.
Mm-hmm.
What is your favorite quotation and why?
My favorite quotation is by Napoleon Hill. Whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind can achieve. And I think it speaks to the power of deciding what you want, being clear on visualizing that, and then making that happen. And it doesn't say whatever the mind can conceive and believe, the mind will achieve. It says it can achieve. It's possible, because you also need to put in that effort. And if I think about anything, well, most things that I've had any sort of success with has been being very clear on the outcome, what is I wanted, visualizing that, and then putting in an extreme amount of effort in order to get that. And I think that's really the key to life.
Cool. I like that. And thinking about yourself 10 years ago, what is the advice that you would give to your younger self or someone like you?
Oh my gosh, I wish I could go back in time and give advice to my younger self, because I made so many mistakes. The one piece of advice that I would say to myself would be prioritize health over making money. You can always make more money. You can't have more time. You can't really get health back, And I think cultivating these habits at a young age, these healthy habits at a young age, has much more of an impact over the length of your life, because it's compounded over time. So I'm confident if I'd have actually, as a 23-year-old, 22-year-old, prioritize health first, these healthy routines first, and then layered on the routine around making money and investing, it would have led to a much smoother journey. Whereas for me, it's been pretty like super obsessed with work, work, shit, crashing, getting ill, this sort of thing. I think overall it would have this brilliant compound effect. So yeah, I think prioritizing mental and physical health is the most important thing.
Cool. I like that. I also liked your conceptualization of layering things on. So I think particularly for, people who are maybe similar to us, more on the kind of type A spectrum, there can often be a inclination of trying to do too much too soon, perfectionism, trying to do everything at once. Whereas layering things on and getting things to a level where you're doing it like you would brush your teeth makes it so much easier to add extra things on.
I totally relate to that. That's such a good point. I think for many people, myself included, it's I know I just want it all now. Patience is actually a virtue. It really helps to do that. And I think you can layer on on a macro level, which is, okay, what's the one thing I want to focus on in my life right now? I want to nail for the next 3 months health. Or even on perhaps even more specific, I want to nail what you've done, which I think is really admirable. You focused on, I'm just going to build muscle. And you've put on a huge amount of muscle in a very short period of time. Yeah, because you've prioritized that, and you haven't said, I want to be the most healthy person in the world, or healthy in all these different aspects, within 3 months. You've been very specific with it. So, the impression that I got is you're layering on the muscle building, then it's what's next? That's consistent. And you can do that on a micro level as well, which I think is very powerful, which is cultivating these habits, these daily habits, and linking them all together. So one of the most effective strategies I've found in implementing health routines and work routines as well is have a list every day, like a morning routine list, that is so well automated that I don't even have to think about doing it. All I have to worry about is opening my phone and looking at that list. And it's as micro as go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, take this supplement, have a cold shower, then meditate. And it's this chain of events that's so layered and it's so easy because everything's laid out that the mind doesn't have to think about doing like 100 things that day. It just does the one thing, which is follow the routine. So that stacking of these habits and linking them together over time, I think creates success. It makes it a lot easier, right?
100%. I like that. Final question. Thinking about yourself in 10 years' time, what advice do you think your future self would give you now?
I suspect in 10 years' time, my future self would probably say prioritize mental health, physical health, and relationships over making money. Because, I think, love is, it's like it's a beautiful thing, and love, care, connection, and I think sometimes I can get a bit too carried away in trying to be like successful. And at the end of the day, like what's important is relationships and having like meaningful connections with people and having the health to do that and the people around to enjoy your life, I think is the most important thing. It's just, it's challenging to sort of always remember that when we're in such a competitive environment. So I suspect that my future self would tell me that.
Cool. I like that.
Cool. Thank you, man. Really enjoyed it. That was so much fun.
Excellent.
Yeah.